All right. So welcome back. We're here at Construction Conversations. I'm here with Lars. How you doing, Lars?
Great, Stephen. Thank you.
And Chris Massey, Senior Superintendent from Ellis Don. Chris, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So we always kind of jump in on a question around your background, but I kind of want to ask it in this way, which is like, what did you want to do when you grew up, like when you were kind of a kid, in terms of like aspirational? And then juxtapose that to your senior superintendent, Don. How did you get there?
So when I was a kid, I guess I would say I grew up in the construction community or a construction background, so to speak, because it was in my family. So I didn't really know anything else other than I think at a very young age, I was going to do construction regardless. I think maybe when I started getting into high school, I was thinking about different avenues, and then it just kind of circled back into construction my last year of high school, and then went to college for construction engineering, and then finished that. So that takes us up to the year 2000. And then from the year 2000 to 2006, I worked for a small company out of Waterloo, Ontario, and then learned quite a bit there, mostly boots on the ground in the field, kind of labor, carpentry, that kind of stuff. And then 2006, August of 2006, I guess, I asked Ellis Don if they were hiring, and that's kind of where the career at Ellis Don started. So from 2006 to 2010, I was working out of our London office, and then I decided to transfer to our Toronto office. I'm pretty sure it was 2010 or 2011, I can't remember. And I've been in the Toronto office ever since.
So you're coming up on your 20 year. Do you get like a hockey stick? What do you guys give up there in Canada for 20 year?
Yeah,
Hockey puck.
yeah, a picture of the Stanley Cup with a puck beside it. Yeah,
There you go.
and a Tim Hortons cup if you get one. If you're lucky.
So I'm surprised not to hear a reference to like a professional hockey player. Was that never a dream? I know in one of our conversations you mentioned you played hockey growing up.
Yeah, I'm a sports guy, so I'm a huge fan of hockey. And obviously didn't work out. I mean, if I was picking careers and I could, yeah, it would have been to be a hockey player for sure, just like every other Canadian kid, I guess. But that wasn't in the cards, and I never really grew after high school, so it just wasn't going to happen anyways. But yeah, I think that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Did you start at Ellis Don on the field side and kind of maintain kind of that progression into the superintendent path?
I was a superintendent when I came to Ellis Don. So I was I've been in the field ever since, but like the company I worked for prior to Ellis Don, I was in the field doing layout, and if you needed to set a door frame, you set a door frame. If you needed to do parapets, you did parapets. If you had to clean the stairwell and remove all the skids, then that's what you did. But that's good. Like I would, to anybody that's starting out a career in construction, 100%, in my opinion, the best place to start is, call it field surveying or field engineering. Some people call it different things, but the surveying aspect of it is extremely beneficial for anybody that wants to be in the field, because you learn the nuts and bolts right from the beginning, and you will know that project inside out and backwards. And you're the go-to person to know when things aren't going the way that they're supposed to. So you have probably the most amount of knowledge on the project for a certain amount of time.
I think that's good advice. I think specifically coming from, so my background was like finance, business econ coming out of college. Yeah. And then I found my way into construction on the office, kind of the PM side. And I was recently in Puerto Rico. We were building some houses down in Puerto Rico as a church. And I was up on a roof, and a lifelong roofer was like, all right, I need you to go square this roof. I just looked at it with a blank look. I've been in construction for 15 years. And
yeah.
I offer you no value at this point. I
don't even know how to spell square, let alone try and get it, right? Yeah.
So I can appreciate your perspective on field first. So, part of the conversation I think would be interesting is when we look at the industry through the lens of maybe some of the publications like McKinsey, I like to pick on them. They often will cite some statistics around the kind of productivity gap in construction versus other industries. And they talk about, in other industries, that growth has been maybe 2.8% to 3.6% in like manufacturing versus 1% annually in construction. And a lot of it, they say, is because of the lack of tech adoption in our industry, right? It's a frequent kind of punching bag for our industry. But like, has that been your experience in kind of your 20 years at Ellis Don? What's your perspective on that?
I would say early on, 100%. Like I remember the days where even just getting a total station was a big deal. And then once you finally got a total station, they turned into robot total station. And that was an even bigger deal. Like mind's blown. Like how can this be a one person object that helps everybody? And then nobody would believe it, right? Like everybody thinks it's spitting out shit information. So you spend the majority of your time making sure that it's right. And don't get me wrong, there's a good learning aspect to that as well. But right from the get-go, I think it was very hard to maybe get people to realize that there's a spot for it. And I would say in the last, probably since COVID, I mean, I don't know if COVID really had anything to do with it. More people were at home and they were able to consult in different ways. But I would say that I think the turning point for me anyways, I think is probably right around COVID, when the adoption of tech really kind of started to take off. And maybe it was in different areas before that, I'm not sure. But for me personally, I think it was probably around the 2018, 2019, 2020, somewhere in that section where people actually started to get into it and look at it as a benefit instead of something that we don't need, that nice to have.
Yeah. Go ahead, Lars.
It's funny. I think prior to COVID, I could count on one hand how many superintendents I knew that could use Zoom or Microsoft Teams or, pick one of the, meeting platforms. And then all of a sudden the industry was instantaneously overnight forced into this digital environment. And everyone that had been objecting now all of a sudden was like, for survival, I've got to do this. Right.
Yep.
And all of a sudden it was like this, wait, it's not that hard.
No.
Yeah.
And funny you mentioned that, Lars, because I was the same. Like in even 2015, we had the capabilities of doing video meetings, but nobody knew even how to log on. Like I could send somebody a link and they'd click on it, and I would end up for 20 minutes trying to tell them to click the link again or turn on your microphone or whatever it is, right? So so it just went, never mind. It's just show up, really.
Yeah.
But
That's right. I'll just be there tomorrow morning at 8.
Yeah. So it took a pandemic to get everybody to realize that you can click a link and you can turn on your camera and you can turn on your microphone and it can be effective. Like shocking, right?
It works.
Yeah.
All in one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe McKinsey's not that wrong, Stephen. Maybe McKinsey's not that wrong.
So for me, there was nobody to converse with because I knew we had the capabilities of doing it. Just nobody on the other end was willing to do it because you've always done it that way. You always came to the meeting personally, and now it's the opposite. Now we can't get anybody to show up, right? So were you still ahead
of that curve coming into maybe 2018, 2019, or did you kind of see the light on the other side in terms of some of the opportunities that tech could offer you?
No, I think I was on the other or ahead of it. It's just that particular instance, you just need, call it a partner to help you with that. And nobody could partner with me, right? So to speak. So it just, you move on to the next thing, right?
Let me ask you a question here. Ahead of the curve, was Ellis Don ahead of the curve, or were you ahead of the curve? Like, what does that curve look like in your experience, 20 plus years construction?
So I think a bit of both. So I think 100% Ellis Don is definitely ahead of the curve, or we tried to be anyways. And I know we have a great team dedicated to making sure we're ahead of the curve or making sure we're adopting things that work. And we've done a much better job at it in the last few years at making sure it works for our field staff. I think maybe before that, it wasn't so much a field staff thing. It was more administrative kind of stuff. I don't want to get too deep into it, but so it's 100% Ellis Don is trying to be ahead of the curve and always will be as far as I'm concerned. And then for myself, yes, I would say I'm ahead of the curve. It turns into you're always trying to sell it because other people may not understand it or understand why you want to use it. And they maybe don't see the benefit in it until it's been proven. And a lot of people don't want to take the plunge. For some reason, they don't want to be the first person to take the plunge and find out it works or doesn't work, whereas I'm the opposite. I would prefer to take the plunge. And if it works, then you work with it. If it doesn't work, I'm on to the next one, right? Or maybe if it doesn't work, we need to tailor it to a certain specific project to get it to work, because it's not, like tech's not a one size fits all, right? So it's, what works for me may not work for the next project, which is fine. That's the way it should be, right? So yeah, I don't know if I have too much more to say about that without getting too deep, but
yeah, no. So, Ellis Don, pretty large company, right? So, one of the challenges I see with any adoption, small gazelle-like companies, large elephant,
Yep.
slow to move, slow to turn. How does a large company, in your experience, maintain, sort of tip of the spear, being able to try new things rather than, okay, time out, we need another committee to advance this other committee's objective, and we have to review 36 options, and before you know it, 3 years later, no decision's been made, right? Because time is money here, and we want tools that can help us right now, like right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that perfectly, but what I can tell you is we do have a team in place that brings tech in, test drives it to a certain degree, and then there's a committee, so to speak, that says there's no chance we'll ever use this, or yes, there's a great opportunity here, and then they might roll it out to somebody else. Maybe it's myself or somebody in a different area, and then pilot project it and see where it goes from there.
And I get it's a fantastic answer. Where I was thinking, maybe from a, value add to listeners is young superintendent like yourself, grew up with Atari or
and by the way,
Nintendo.
I just look young. I'm not that young. I just look young.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting you. Yeah.
No, it's good. But hey, you're touching tech. You grew up with tech, right? You got other superintendents. They want that stuff too. And I guess if you're superintendent listening, if you're a CEO listening, how does that balance work of desires to test things out in the field, make your life easier, make your team's life easier, deliver a better product, but advance it in some sort of controlled way. I guess what I'm getting at is like, how have you found success there, right? It's obviously a dance around leadership, but it's also a dance around your passion, finding that right tug and pull of the right people. How's that dance work? And again, if you think about who's listening, how can they implement some of this stuff?
Okay, so what I would say, I think, is originally I was not really on board with more technology. We've been rolling out tech for years on end, so to speak, and it was when they tried to roll out some new technology to me, or when Ellis Don wanted me to pilot project a piece of software, I literally was like, come on, guys. Like, I just, I'm done with apps. They're not working.
Not again.
Not again. We're not even in a position where and back then, I don't want to say back then, like it was only 5 years ago, but at that point, you had your iPad, but you had to be in the trailer for it to refresh, and then you could go back out to the field, right? You know what I mean? Like, it just wasn't efficient. There was never a perfect kind of line, like, yes, this is great, and it's great all the time. So you just you fade in and you fade out with it. But what happened was I got a phone call from our management and said, we have this pilot project. We'd like you to try it. Same thing. I'm out. And they said, well, can you please try? And I said, I don't think I should. And then they said, pretty please. And I said, okay, fine. Right? Like, that's kind of how it all unfolded. And then, so anyways, we got together with this company, and we started to pilot it. The first kind of meeting with them was really, really good, really, really productive. And it really started the juices flowing on how you can, maybe make this work to your own benefit and not necessarily everybody else's. Because at that point in the project, you just kind of have a vision, and where you're at, where you want to go. And they just happened to walk in at the right time. And I was, very well rehearsed with what they were trying to sell. And I just really wanted to, once we really got going into it, I really wanted to make it work. But what I was really, worried about, I guess, is a couple of things. One, how fast can you manipulate this software to do what I just asked you to do? So they take it back, they do their thing. And it was, 2 or 3 weeks. So I can't remember what I was requesting to do something. And literally the turnaround time for them was very, very minimal in the grand scheme of things. So you do that a couple of times, like, holy, like this has got some potential. And what if I want to make this, strictly, more pigeonholed for Ellis Don, and start going down that pathway. And they were able to literally do all that. So basically everything I asked them to do, they were able to do, plus more. And every time you update and every time you change things around, it gets the juices flowing, the ideas start going, you get more buy-in from other people, and then you kind of leave the room doing high fives, and it works. The roadblock after that is, first of all, there's a cost to it. Second of all, it's not necessarily like every project kind of has its own idea of what tech looks like. Like it's not, a $10 million job compared to a $1 billion job will not have the same tech, and nor should it, right? So there's a certain level of expertise, or maybe expertise is the wrong word, but a certain level of tech required for each project.
Tools.
Right, exactly, right? So
Can I pause you and just ask you a question about that? Because I think what you just described is the dream scenario for every construction tech company that exists, right? Which is being able to engage with a superintendent who knows what they're talking about, create a relationship that ends up in them helping to build product, right? So like, what do you think is unique about this company, their approach? Did they have domain expertise? Like, did they show up with people who knew construction, or were they just open-minded?
All the above. They show up with people that knew construction. They also showed up with people that had no idea about construction, but were very good with their domains and whatever magic happens in the cloud, right? Like that kind of stuff. So they had a good team behind them of people that could, like, any question that you had, there was always somebody there that could answer that, right? It's similar to Ellis Don. We have just such a backing of good people. If you have any questions, there's always somebody that you can call and ask, right? Whether it's somebody out in Calgary or Vancouver or Ottawa or whatever, there's somebody in Ellis Don that's had that experience that you can call. The same sort of thing was starting to happen with these tech companies. Is they had people, this particular one anyways, they had people that could supply me with the right information and more or less what I wanted to hear to get to the next step, and fast, right? That was key. So it was fast. So I can't remember the time frame, probably in a span of, I think it was about 2 years. The first 3 months, all we really did was basically build the program to tailor to Ellis Don, I guess, or myself at that time.
Were they just working with you guys, or were they working with other contractors?
They were, I might have this wrong, but from what I remember, we were their first customer in North America. When they came to North America, they were trying to get in with some other companies, construction companies, but don't quote me on it. I think we were their first one in North America. Canada for sure.
We'll make people subscribe to our Patreon to actually release the name of this mysterious company.
Right. The Patreon.
They know who they are.
So you guys go through this positive experience, and it helps maybe give you a perspective of the partnership that can be curated between field and tech. And then does that then lead into you more proactively looking at, like, hey, if this can help me in these ways, how do I bring these other solutions into the fold? Yeah,
so it 100% changed the way I plan a job, because I knew what it was capable of doing, and I knew that it would take a lot of work off of my shoulders, so to speak. Workload, not work, but workload off of my shoulders. There's a bit of setup time, and once you understand the program or the programming part of it, you really want to put the proper information in so that it's spitting out the right information. But it totally 100% changed the way that the thought process of putting schedules together and logistics and planning, because you're basically feeding a robot, right? So you can get extremely granular because the robot is bringing the information back to you. Whereas before, and like if you're building a schedule, if you put 3,000 items in there, then you have to update 3,000 items on your own, right? But if you're feeding the robot 3,000 items and the robot goes out and checks everything, it's coming back and it's updating those 3,000 items for you. You're doing a quick scan and quick check, and you're making sure the logic and everything works out, and then you're done, right? So that was a big eye opener for me.
So let's talk CEO, president of the organization. Incredible feedback around this one tool. Seems like this is great. Are other superintendents at Ellis Don? Was this adopted enterprise-wide? Is everyone loving this thing? Or are they like, oh my gosh, Chris, you just made my life, you know what? Like this is really painful. Like, talk to us about like enterprise adoption just beyond like this. What's been the experience?
It's been tough. I'm not gonna lie, it's been tough. I think it's starting to take stride now. Again, I think with anything, and there's a learning curve to it, and there's an ability, or not an ability, but there's a standoff period of, we don't need that. We've been doing this for a million years. Why do I need that? And then there's another group that would say, this is too much work for me. I don't really need this. I'm going to do it my way. I've still got, I'm still running jobs with Crayolas and highlighters and 11 by 17s, right? Which is fine. There's right?
Sticks at Pebble Rock and a finger.
Yeah, and let's go grab some mud and see what it does, right? But and that's fine. So there was that roadblock. There's a lot of people that don't understand, because there's parts of it that are maybe out of people's comfort zones.
Yeah.
So trying to get that, into the field has been tough. Starting to gain stride now. I think people are just starting to understand the positive part of it, and that it's becoming a tool instead of a nuisance.
Does this application give you back time? Does it return time to you? Or is it just why would you do it rather than Excel, or
No.
sticks and
What I
Pebble
would
Rock?
say, or I think the best way to answer that is it, yes, it gives you back time, but if you think you're going to get it and it's going to save you months on the schedule, it's not. So it's not giving you that
No.
kind of time back. What it's giving you
I
is
mean your time.
it's giving
I
me
mean your
my time back, and it's also allowing me to present real data in the event of a conflict, right? And it's lay it all out. This is what it is. You did this, I did this. Let's come to an agreement and we carry on. And here's the proof, right? And it's 99% right. Like every once in a while you find, a few things that it thought was wrong or whatever, but big deal. I'll take that all day long, right?
I love what you're saying, and I have certainly found, I think that the majority of the resistance around this, hey, I've been doing it 20 years.
Yeah.
Look, those buildings are still there, right? They were built and they were on time. They were,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, sure. But it was a grind,
But
probably.
bingo,
right?
right? It's like, and it's like, no. I'm not saying what you've done is wrong.
Yeah.
In fact, it's not bad.
And if it works for you,
if I
carry on. Yeah.
carry
Yeah.
on, but if there's a way to return time to you to either spend more time walking and checking on the workers or going home at a more reasonable hour,
Yeah.
or quality of life, again, just it gives you back your own personal time to think bigger and be a more of an impact player than a grunt, right? Just chugging on spreadsheets or whatever.
Yeah.
That to me is the biggest mental shift that people have to grasp around. Well, what is this tech? Is it just one more thing, or wait, can it give me back time?
And I think the other potential part that I'm leaving out is that it forces you to be a better superintendent in a lot of ways, because you have to do the planning up front. The drawings have to be at a certain level of detail in order for this to all work. So your consultants, they need to hold themselves accountable, and then you need to hold yourself accountable from a scheduling and a logistics and a planning and all that stuff, and then it merges together and then it works. But if one of those groups isn't cooperating, some of these softwares might not be for you, right? And that's a hard sell to some people, because they're not. There's still a lot of resistance for BIM models, I find. And what I'm trying to preach is, you wouldn't give us shitty drawings, so why are you giving us a shitty model, right? So give us the model, give it to us properly, give it to a certain level of detail, and then I'll work with it, right? Then I will take that model and now, and need to rewind a little bit, but like that model, and it happens in phases, which is fine, but that model now becomes my baby, and that baby feeds all the tech that I'm trying to introduce to the project. So you have to give me the model, and you have to give it to me in a certain level of detail so that I can make everything else work for everybody's advantage. And it would be the same if it's a set of drawings. You wouldn't give me a set of drawings, or you shouldn't, or you try not to get a set of drawings the day that you're ready to start laying out a floor, right? All of that stuff
Well, I think
is supposed to be done prior to me getting there. And it forces us to...
and what you're describing is digital building, right? It
Exactly.
is, you're respecting the digital in the same way that you respect the physical. And by respecting the digital, you're forcing yourself, and you're creating a culture pre-planning around that digital environment that is ideally going to make that physical build process easier.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And like the people that are willing to put that time in, the companies, it's a great, great system. It's when you get one person that doesn't agree with it, and then it's just like, oh my God, really? Like, can we not just put in the extra hour? Really? You know what I mean? Like, you're just, you're not doing yourself any favors by not putting the level of detail in ahead of time, so that we can work with.
So let me ask you this, Chris. So you've gone through this experience with this kind of tech partner. You've implemented on a few projects. There's the opportunity where you kind of and don't always know what you don't know as it relates to how existing and future tech can have a similar kind of impact on your efficiencies and perspective. And so when you go and approach a new project, how do you create a culture of maybe innovation or an appreciation for innovation now that you've gone through these experiences, to make it known that, hey, on this project, we're going to try things. Like, is that part of your perspective?
Yep, 100%. So what I find a lot of people, the very first roadblock that typically happens is everybody focuses on something that the tech can't do. And I'm saying, okay, that's fine, but you know that it can do other things, right? And that one thing that it can't do it's not that big of a deal. Like we're getting into, robot layouts now, right? Like you literally, you feed the machine with the layout, it goes out and it prints it on the floor and you walk away, right? And everybody's happy. But the focus from some people was, did you see how long it took to change the ink? I'm like, are you kidding me? You know how long it takes somebody to get a chalk line out and chalk a fucking line? Like it's the same, you know what I mean? Like so that's where I think that's some of the problems that we have up front. And I find
objections. They're making objections.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I don't really understand. Maybe there's just different views from people, but which is fine. They're all entitled to that view. But once you get past those barriers and you start to establish, we're going to go down this path, and this is what I need from you. And trust me, by the end of it, you'll see the results and you'll see the advantages of doing it. And I'm really hoping that you can adopt that, and I'm hoping you can take that to the next one, because you're probably going to need to share that information to somebody else. And what we're really, really trying to do, what I'm trying to do anyways, is I don't want any of this tech to take away the thinking. You can't take away our thought process, or I don't believe in taking away the thought process of putting a building together and how you do it with your partners, because that's the fun part of construction, if there's such a thing.
Right. Yes.
That's the conversations, construction still construction. We're just using different tools to get from point A to point B. And I still need help with our partners to get me from point A to point B, whether it's helping with scheduling, whether it's helping with layout, whether it's helping with whatever, the model, whatever it may be. You still need that help, and you still need the thought process to be there from start to finish. And I think as a leader, you're really trying to push. We're not really changing that much. It's still, a building's a building. You put the foundation in, you put the roof on, you throw the envelope on, and everybody walks away doing high fives. It's the same thing, right? You're just trying to find better, more efficient ways to do it so that it's not as much of a grind to get there.
Love it. %.
Well, and if you go back to maybe even the earlier part of this conversation where we talked about, is when we think about the purpose of tech, there's two kind of modes of thought. One is commercially motivated, which is, hey, tech is going to make our job more efficient. It may be going to increase margin on projects.
Yeah.
But there's another mode of thought, which is like, Chris Massey, is this going to make your life better, your family's life better, the community's better? And when we think about solving the labor challenges, I think it's that second mode of thought that we have to lean into, which is going to make the industry more attractive. It's going to bring young people in.
Yeah.
How do you think that part of the value prop of tech is maybe discussed enough?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's
or is it even happening?
I mean, it happens. I don't know. I think part of the problem even is that there's so much out there, and there's so many people, or so much new technology coming at us from all different angles. It gets overwhelming. And maybe there's an aspect to that people are just like, it's taking over the world,
Yeah.
So I don't want it. Yeah. Right. Like, but I don't, and I have yet to really find tech or technology that replaces humans entirely, because you still need to feed it with proper information, and you still need to somewhat check that information, right? So it takes people to put all that in the system. It takes people to digest what the system is spitting out at the same time, right? So it might eliminate a few people along the way, I guess, or that you don't need 10 people, you just need 7 now. And then even like when you get into the robots that are drilling holes for you, that's fine. I get it. And it can be fast, and it does replace maybe a couple workers, but there's an element to it that is much better because it's so much safer. You're behind the control. The robot is drilling, or it's welding, or whatever it needs to on the slab edge, but you've still got one person on the controls. And somehow that information got to that control and is now being fed through a human to the robot. Right. So I think there's a common misconception that, the robots are taking over the world, or I haven't seen it yet. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree. Let's put Lars on the spot, because he big GC.
Yeah.
Unless he's having a good day. So
he's having a great air day.
Great air day.
So Lars, on this question of like the tech opportunity, I think the general kind of thought is the efficiencies gained by tech traditionally is kind of absorbed commercially rather than allocated to the individual.
Mhm.
But what's that balance? Because ultimately there's a relationship between maybe the morale of the people and profitability of the company. How would you think about this in terms of tech adoption in the next 5 years?
Super, super interesting. And this is, as Chris, you know this, and Stephen too, but like this is like a multifaceted problem, right? Because the projects that we work on take years to get done, right?
Yep.
And there's many, many lives involved, and a lot of time, skilled labor. It's critical to the success of these projects. So, what happens, I think, get focused on is how are we setting schedule? How are we picking up time? How are we doing all these things? It's almost like this sort of person on top of the hill rather than, the guy out, the guy doing the work or the guy in the field, right? And there's that, I think, my leadership approach and what I was passionate about was if I can return time to the individual and make that individual believe that I'm not trying to saddle them with one more thing to do because they already have too much to do, too many emails, too many of everything. But if I can return time to them, it improves quality of life. And there's this idea around doing more with less, right? So it's, can I actually really do more with less? Or can I do more with the same? And people are high-fiving and smiling rather than super stressed, treating each other poorly and a, dare I say, toxic environment on a job site. Like no one wants to be around that.
Yeah.
And so I've always been around like, listen, I want a team of 8 players. I'm going to find 8 players. And from a culture and leadership standpoint, I'm going to try to give those 8 players whatever tool that they desire and they need to do their job most efficiently. Speak up, I'm going to give it to you, right? And generally speaking, I'm going to see how it fits into this big machine, right? And if I have a superintendent who wants to go try a robot, layout machine on whatever job, and we tried it, I think down in Houston, it was like, heck yeah, this makes total sense. Let's go give it a shot.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I do believe one of the challenges is, and Chris, this is probably your case, you're not building the same widget every single time.
Exactly. Yep.
There's unique challenges. Yep. And I think that's where it gets into this, okay, what are the job specific tool sets that are needed, right? Are we doing a $10 million job? Are we doing a $1 billion job, right? Different tools.
Yeah. And location.
And weather, Canada, San Diego. And then the other piece is, well, how do I standardize? And this is what I focused a lot on because, I hired really good builders, but it was like, how do I standardize my back office? So it's structured, it's efficient. The guys at the tip of the spear have all the information they need to get the job done, regardless of the size of project, type of project. We are a machine that's standardized and just pumping stuff out. We're not the tail wagging the dog, right? Chris is the dog. And we're here to support, right? Yeah. And so that was always my approach, and I still feel strongly about that because I feel like a lot of leaders miss that opportunity, frankly.
Yeah. So one thing I should add to on top of what you're saying, Lars, is that for me the efficiency is in the plan, is in the planning.
So, yes.
And if you're not planning, you're probably reactive, right? And that right there is what starts to create the environment of, I guess, I don't know how else to describe it, but like nobody wants to be there and you're just, it's really, really hard to get people focused. But if you're putting a plan together and you're continuously collaborating with the team on what that plan is and you're tracking that plan, then you're going to be much more successful than if you just show up and say, hey, what do you guys want to do today? Right? Because then it's like an anthill. There's ants everywhere. And they don't really know, they're just doing stuff. The work is getting done, but they're not doing it efficiently.
Right.
So for me, it's all about the planning and using the technology to help show your planning. And that's kind of how it all feeds into the machine, right? Like it's literally, what is your plan? And now you're tracking what your plan was.
I love that because that is like planning is the technology.
Exactly.
Right. I think there's a misunderstanding that technology is always software, and that's not true. Right. Technology is doing something in a different way using people, process, and technology at times. And so like when Frederick Winslow Taylor was with a stopwatch recording things happening at the manufacturing floor to look at manufacturing efficiencies, like that was a new technology because he was developing process efficiencies. Yeah. So I love that, Chris. That's a great point.
Well, it's the truth. I mean, that's, I've been doing this for a bit now, and that's it. And it's not that it's easy to say because there's a lot of potential roadblocks that stop you from planning. Like everything has to go perfect. Like if your drawings have to be really good. Your team has to be able to adopt those drawings and adopt the plan. And everybody has to collaborate, and, you need a straight line. But a well thought out plan that's collaborated within your team creates a great, for me anyways, creates a great environment.
So 2 questions. How did you become a good planner, and how are you training others on passing that skill set down?
The first part of that question, how to become a good planner, is probably because I hate being reactive. It's just, I don't know. I don't sleep well at night by being reactive. I sleep well by I sleep better. I don't sleep well anymore, but I sleep better at knowing what the plan is before I go to the following day, right? I don't like going home not knowing what we're doing tomorrow. That's just the way I'm wired. But the way that I try to involve our entire team on what the plan is moving forward for at least the next week and into 2 weeks, into 3 weeks. So we create a planner here. We call it CM Planner, where we take our drawings, and I don't want to bore you with too much of the details, but we'll use AutoCAD. We'll take our drawings. We'll use AutoCAD to take off all the noise. So it's literally I want everything in layers, from walls to foundations to piers to steel, right? So you basically set out with a blank sheet of paper, and then the first layer to go on would be, raft slab. So raft slab pour 1A. So you turn that layer on, and then we want to talk specifically about that. How are we going to get to this phase? So we'll use AutoCAD to do all those layers, and then we'll convert it into a PDF, Bluebeam. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is, but it's not. But there's 2 parts to that, which I really like, because you're getting into the drawings. You have no choice but to get into the drawings, to get into how you want to flow things together. And then as you're turning layers on and off, you get to see, in real time, you see the flow. So when you turn your layers on, you're there building the building one layer at a time in sequence, from start to finish. So it all makes sense. So when you look at a set of drawings right now, there's your dimensions, details, all kinds of jazz, right? You want to take, for me, you take all that off. It's just a blank sheet of paper, and then you start to put your layers on, and then that's how you build it. And then those layers that you're turning on are the exact same tasks that are in your schedule. So when you turn that layer on and you complete that layer, your schedule is done for that section. Move on, carry on. We don't need to talk about that ever again. It's green now. So we have a color system. Go ahead.
What size project does this approach work for? Small, medium, large, all of the above?
All the above, right? It's if you have a $5 million project and you just really want to get into the drawings, that's how I would do it personally.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
a great description.
You just reach the finish line a heck of a lot quicker, right? This takes time to do on a $700 million job compared to a $5 million job. I don't know, maybe I can do a $5 million job in a weekend, whereas $700 million job is probably 6 months in the making. And the drawings probably aren't as advanced as a $5 million job. So anyway, what we'll do is once we get to that section, we will put it into software, and that software we create tasks, and then we assign those tasks to whoever from the subtrade needs to do them, plus the superintendent that's looking after that area. And then we establish some dates. If they start slipping on their dates, it's all recorded. We can take pictures, we can attach it to that task, and then we go from there. We can take all that, we can convert it into a Gantt chart so it's easier for people to see or understand, and then you can see your flow. But the real magic is what happens prior to getting to the tasks, right? So you want to sit down in a million different meetings and establish your workflow. Like for us, even for when we get onto our slabs with drywall partitions, I turn all the walls off, right? The slab's there, I turn all the walls off. Here's your first pass, and then you show where your first pass is. That's one layer, right? All your walls turn on. Once we have that, so we would color that yellow on our drawings because that's where you are. But what your second pass is would be red because that's where you're going to go, right? And then once pass 1 is done, it turns green. Pass 2 turns yellow, and then pass 3 would turn red. That's how and then everybody seems to be able to relate to that better than, the last planner system, in my opinion, or TAC planning or any of that stuff. It's a one-stop and one size fits all kind of opportunity. And then within that drawing, now you're talking about your staging areas, your deliveries, and all of that is on that one same drawing, right? So pass 1 is done, pass 2 is done. You have no room left. Okay, Mr. Drywall, you want to bring in 700 sheets? Not a chance, bud. You got to bring in 20 because then you're going to put it over here, right? No offense, but that's the only room you have because now the ductwork guy can't put up his stuff because your stuff's in the way, right? So you see it, right? So it's all real time. It's just literally, it's a box, right? You just draw a box on the drawing that this is your staging area. And then our deliveries software, we have the exact same drawing. We put it into our delivery software, and those staging and delivery plans, our subtrades have to pick from that drawing, and they can only deliver their materials to what we agreed to from a staging plan on that level. It's straightforward, right? Like, and then if they haven't, and for whatever reason they've decided to pick their own, I can tell you right away, right? Buddy, get your stuff out of here. It's not going to happen.
So what I heard you describe was some of the, we had preparatory, meetings with, subcontractors coordinating all that. So what I just heard you describe again is this immense planning effort, right? Immense communication, coordination. And obviously you're coordinating all of that with subs.
100%.
They're right there with you.
Yep. 100%. And that's, so everybody's in a room and it's collaborative. Like you can't, in my opinion, it can't be a free for all. So for the project I'm on now, it's a small footprint. It's a big job with a small footprint. It has to be just in time deliveries or this isn't going to work, and nobody is going to be successful. Even if you're bringing in your own material and you're bringing in too much, you are going to be moving that more than you're installing it, right? And the sooner that everybody can understand that, the better off you are. And what generally happens is people start to work together a lot more because they know everybody generally wants to get in and get out as fast as possible, and they want to be efficient. And that's what I'm saying. Like the efficiency is all in the planning. And your plans don't always work. Don't get me wrong. This is like a perfect scenario, right? But sometimes your plans don't work out the way you want them to, but that's okay.
What?
Yeah, right. Shocking.
In construction,
shocking. But when they don't,
Canada.
Yeah, that's right. Everything north of you guys is a disaster.
So Chris, how do you integrate that back into a CPM schedule that's going to give you maybe access to higher level risk analysis, or does that matter? Because I think there's an overweighting at times of what the CPM is saying, but what kind of integration, if any?
But the CPM, the tasks on the CPM are the same tasks that are going in on the planning. You try to get it word for word, right? So if I needed to, like later on in the project, the software we use, it'll update the schedule on its own, right? It's the AI version. It does a scan and it tells you exactly what piece went in and when it went in, and it literally knocks it off the schedule for you. You don't have to do it. Prior to that software, what I do is you copy the exact same task, like pass 1, right? It'll be same thing, pass 1, level 4, right? It's the same thing. It's pass 2, level 4, pass 3, level 4. It's the same task, right? So when it's done, it's done. And when it started, right? So it's the same. So you're not recreating extra work. Yeah. It's the same thing. And I can print that out and I can give it to our schedule and he can update the schedule without even talking to me because it's the exact same thing, right? So I would say I think the best way to describe it, it's the kind of our ecosystem of planning. And you're not creating more work. You're becoming more efficient at your job because you're understanding all the bits and pieces that have to go into it to have an effective plan.
What if you had, we'll say, abilities to create a new product, whether it's hardware or software, to solve any problem in construction that you could solve in a very small amount of time? What would that be?
Off the top of my head, a very high level, very high level detailed model in less time, because that's what starts it all, right?
LOD 350 model to snap your fingers.
Exactly. Well, 500 would be great. I'll take 350, but
let's go.
I guess I give you unlimited abilities.
If there's a way to snap your fingers and make something happen, that's what I would, maybe for Christmas, that's what I'll ask for, but
I love that. Also, my day job loves that too. It's a good little quote I can extract.
Yeah.
This has been fun. One question we do like asking, because I think when you look at there's a lot of studies done on the folks who are early adopters and just the brain structure of that population. But I would imagine there's like a lot more studies done on an early adopter that is also a superintendent. Like that's a unicorn. It's when you are interacting with the next generation, I think it's a great example of how the industry is evolving. I think the question to you is what would your advice be to the 23-year-old Chris Massey coming into this industry, preparing themselves for what are all the new challenges of this industry as now?
That's a good question. I think it's being a superintendent is a lot harder than what people think it is. I think a lot of people think we're, standing around and just pointing and yelling, I guess. I don't know. I think, there's definitely different levels of superintendents. And I would say to anybody, spend as much time as you can in the field interacting with your trades, because you'll learn a lot more there in a lot shorter of a time or a much quicker time. But if you skip the steps, and even when you think you're ready to take the next step, you're probably not, but you might get thrown into that position and you revert back to how it started every time. For me anyways, you revert back to how it started. Like I still revert back to when I was in the field doing layout, right? And how it was. And you know, that tech has changed, but it's still the same. Like it's still angles and lines, right? But I think that the most important thing is communication is key. So try and master that as quick as you possibly can. And then pay attention, because, you know, you get one building under your belt, whether you're a super, an assistant super, whatever. The next one is not the same, but you'll find similarities between it from what you did before. Like concrete is concrete, like from ordering concrete, I guess you're still ordering concrete. You just need to, you know, maybe have 10 different mixes instead of 4, right? So that kind of stuff. But that's the stuff you want to pay attention to. That's the stuff you want to retain. And if you're not retaining that, you have to be careful. You get yourself in a lot of trouble, because you'll find that you're going backwards. And, you know, everybody wants to be the best that they can be. And I think the best advice I could give a younger Chris Massey is, you know, make sure you're paying attention and make sure you're really mastering what it's like to put a building together through the eyes of a subtrade. You know what I mean? Like when if there's an issue between the drywall and the ductwork guys, you know, there's generally a reason. It's not they're making it up. It's generally a reason, right? And that reason might even revert back to your plan, right? Your plan didn't work to begin with, and nobody figured it out until that exact spot. Yep. And that's okay. That happens. You just, you know, what I would suggest is just make sure you're aware, and that you can realize that it was the plan that was screwed up to begin with. It's nobody's fault. You just come up with a different plan, right? So you work together to come up with a different plan to go into plan B, right? So, but I find a lot of, for whatever reason, there's some stubbornness about, you know, who's wrong and all that. And I don't care. I really don't care who's wrong. Just fix it and carry on with life, because it's going to happen again, probably on a different floor, but in a slightly different way, right? So anyways, I guess that was a pretty long-winded answer to.
No, I mean, there's good nuggets in there. I mean, one of the things that I took away was that idea of, like, when you're young, you've got time, you've got less responsibilities, like take advantage of that. Yeah. And actually lean into learning everything around you. Because I think that does get lost. Like
100%.
Trying to recover that learning when you're older, when you've got more responsibilities, is really tough.
And what I find is, you know, you have compartments in your brain, right? So you might, you know, you think you've retained it, but it could go away for 7 years. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, wait, I did do that, right? Yeah. It comes back, yeah, right?
Chris, last question. Do you find... do you have a forum of like-minded superintendents that are all kind of like challenging each other around different innovative ways to build? Or do you have that within Ellis Don? Do you have that within the industry? Because there's so many silos, right? How do we break down some of these silos?
I mean, I have a pretty good, Ellis Don is full of good people, right? So I think there's some collaborative tools that we use internal that nobody will ever see or hear about. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. LinkedIn is probably the easiest forum to find what people are doing and if it's working or not. But I don't think I really belong to any forum, so to speak, that, you know, we get together every Tuesday night, drink beer and talk about tech. That doesn't happen if that's what you're asking.
That's called a safety meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I mean, if you're looking for stuff, I think for the most part, it's, you know, LinkedIn. You can find anybody on LinkedIn and what they're doing.
Let me ask the question slightly different. Were there any mentors that you had in the industry, and how did they make themselves available? How did you interact with them? Clearly, you're at the top of your game, Chris, right? And I think there's a lot of people that listen and sort of desire that proficiency. Clearly, the leadership approach you take around being proactive, hey, let's solve the problem or plan the plan, right, and then work it. You know, so who made some major impacts on you, both in building knowledge and then leadership style?
So I have lots of mentors. And to be honest, I bet you every job that I did, to a degree, some degree, whoever I was working for at the time became a mentor. And they probably, like, I can almost call any of them up right now if I had a question. Some are retired. Well, one is retired. Two are retired. And plus I have a coach that if I need to reach out to, even if it's something other than construction or, you know, how did you deal with this situation? You know, whatever it may be, then, it's a 1 hour session and just call them up as needed. Right. So those things are very, very beneficial. But from a mentorship, I think it's, even to be honest, even you get mentored by your coworkers, right? So as you're coming up sometimes, and maybe I just got lucky, maybe it's not like this for everybody, but for me, it was mostly a lot of people that I was working with are roughly the same age, probably within 2 or 3 years. You're having kids at the same time. So you're dealing with kind of all the same stuff together. And as you're coming up through the system and you kind of lean on each other. So I would highly recommend, you take as much information from your coworkers as possible, because it's each job at Ellis Don anyways, for the most part, it's a different team per job, per project, right? So you can, get some really good friendships or some good bonds or some mentorship that you can take from your coworkers. But, if you're lucky enough to have good leaders, which I have, you revert back to that a lot. I think what people don't see is internally, if I'm having a conversation, there's lots of times where I'm processing, I felt like this has happened before. Maybe it's happened to me. You're dialing your brain back 10 years to the same conversation that you had with maybe your senior superintendent at that time. And somehow you can process all that information with a span of like 3 seconds and have the same conversation with the person that's in front of you. So it's kind of a cycle in a lot of ways, if that makes sense, because, there's a lot of the same things seem to happen in spurts. And I'm even finding, like, the project I'm on right now is 4 years, but there's people that I'm seeing now that I haven't seen for 7 to 10 years. So the cycle of foreman that I'm running into again seems to be popping back up, and that's what makes it fun, I guess. Like, again, so you have good relationships, or you make relationships and you work off each other, and everybody generally, everybody has the same, they have the same output or the same look on their career for the most part. They just want to do a good job and carry on, right, and do their best, right? So for us, it's as a leader, you're trying to pull the best out of everybody all day long, I think but I couldn't do it without understanding the mentors and how they dealt with things as I was coming up.
This has been fantastic, Chris. I know asking for an hour out of a superintendent's day is high currency. So want to be
I've delegated all my tasks today, so we're good. We're good for another 2 hours.
And here we go. Lesson on delegation.
Exactly.
Well, Chris, thank you. Lars, any closing thoughts?
One piece, I love the mentor comment there. There's so many good nuggets there. Chris, honestly, you sound like a fantastic leader. You sound like a fantastic builder, superintendent. Obviously, a family man. I think a lot of young listeners can learn a lot from a guy like you.
Thank you.
And we need more Chris Masseys in construction. I'll tell you that. No, I think probably, if, again, for some of the young guys out there right now, any suggestions on, why to choose construction? What wakes you up in the morning? What do you love about it? What gets you excited? I mean, I think you obviously are an inspirational person. I think the more of that inspiration you can share to this field and the next generation. Closing, go for it, man.
So I think it's fun. It's a grind, but it's fun. And you might not feel like it. There are some pretty stressful times. Don't get me wrong. I guess there's some sleepless nights, and it's in phases. Like you'll go 2 months or 3 months where you're not sure if you slept for 3 months, right? Because you're just, you're dialed in, you're really trying to get things done, and it's push time, right? But that you seem to get over that quickly, right? And then you understand that, do you remember when, like, it will be 3 years into something, you'll be like, do you remember when this happened, right? And then there's a laugh. Right. So it might feel like a really, really big grind. And I guess it is, but you'll get over it quick. Right. And you'll learn that it's fun, and you need to make sure that you're having some sort of fun. And that's what keeps, for me, if it's not fun, I'm not staying sharp, and I'm not, you want, in my opinion, you want your team to be having fun while they're at work. But they need to understand that there's a job to do at the same time. You just want to have fun doing that job. All right. And that's kind of how I try and preach, because like I said, it's a grind. Like for this, the one I'm on right now, it's a 4-year grind, right? So you need to make sure every once in a while, you're looking up, you take the team out for whatever it may be. And sometimes it's a 10-minute coffee, and they love it. Right. And it's a reset. Right.
Good things rarely come in easy packages. Right. So that's a great closing message. Well, Chris, thank you again. Appreciate you hopping on with us.